friends, so today we are going to continue working on long division. We'll be solving some problems using 3-digit dividends being divided by 1-digit divisors. But some of these problems are going to have remainders. So let's start by taking a look at our long division steps. So remember, there's 5 steps to solving a long division problem, and those steps are divide, multiply, subtract, bring it on down, and then you bring it on back or you repeat the steps. And remember, we have a helpful wrap to help us remember those 5 steps. And it goes a little like this. Divide, multiply, and subtract. Bring it on down and bring it on back. So remember, I always sing those steps in my head to help remind me of which step I need to do when solving a long division problem. So let's take a look at our first example. So first up, we are going to be solving 527 divided by 5. So first, we're going to be looking at our 5, which is in our hundreds place. And we're going to divide because that's our first long division step. So we're going to ask ourselves, how many times can 5 go into 5? And well, I know the answer is 1. So I'm going to write a 1 up top right above the 5 that I just divided. And I'm going to check off that, yes, we have divided. Next step is to multiply. So I'm going to put our multiplication symbol over here to help us out. And remember, when we multiply, you always multiply the divisor, which is 5, the number we're dividing by the digit that you just wrote in your quotient, which is a 1. So we're going to start by doing 5 times 1, which is 5. And I'm going to write that right here. And I'm going to check off that, yes, we have multiplied. Our next step is to subtract. 5 minus 5 is 0. I've subtracted. Next up, I have to bring on down the next digit so I can continue to divide. So my next digit is this 2. So we're going to bring the 2 on down and check off that we've brought it down. And now we're going to bring it on back to the first step, which is divide. Okay? So now we're looking at 2 as our dividend. And we need to ask ourselves, how many times can 5 go into 2? And I know 2 is smaller than 5, so 5 goes into 2 0 times. It can't go in. So I'm going to put a 0 on top of my 2 that I just brought down. And I'm going to check off that we've divided. Next, I need to multiply the 5 by the digit I just wrote in my quotient, which is 0. So 5 times 0 gives me 0. Check off that we've multiplied. Next up, we need to subtract. 2 minus 0 gives me 2. Check off that we've subtracted. Now I need to bring on down my next digit, which is this 7. So I'm going to bring on down my 7 to make my new dividend 27. And now I'm going to check that I've brought it down, and now I'm bringing my steps back to the first one, which is to divide. So now I'm dividing 27 by 5. So I'm going to ask myself, how many times can 5 go into 27? And to help myself out, I'm going to count my multiples by skip counting, and I'm going to try to get as close to 27 as possible without going over. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Oh, I can stop because 30 is too big. It's larger than 27. So I have to go back, and I see that 5 goes into 27 5 times. So I'm going to write my 5 up top. And I'm going to check off that we've divided for a third time. Now my next step is to multiply. So I'm going to multiply my divisor, which is 5, by the digit I just wrote in my quotient, which is also 5. So 5 times 5 gives me 25. I'm going to check off that we have multiplied. My next step is to subtract. So I'm going to subtract 7 minus 5, which is 2. And I know 2 minus 2 gives me 0. So I'm not even going to write it down below. So I'm left over with 2. And I'm going to follow my arrow and bring my 2 up top because 2 is my remainder. So that means after I divided 527 by 5, I was left over with 2. Okay, so my answer is 105 with a remainder of 2. And remember, friends, our remainders are always smaller than our divisor, which is the number that we are dividing by. Okay, and I don't have any more steps to do, so I've solved this problem. So let's take a look at another problem. Just going to erase that, and we'll go to our next problem. All right, friends. So next up, we have 369 divided by 4. And I have my steps over to the right to help me stay on track. So first up, I need to divide. So I'm going to look at my digit all the way to the left in my dividend, which is a 3. That's my first digit that we're going to work with. So we're going to ask ourselves, how many times can 4 go inside of 3? Oh, I know 4 is bigger than 3, so it can't go inside of 3. So 4 goes into 3 0 times. So I'm going to check off that I've divided. Next up, I need to multiply, and I'm going to put my multiplication symbol right here. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 0, which gives me 0. Check off that, yes, ma'am, we have multiplied. Next up, we're going to subtract. 3 minus 0, well, that just gives me 3. I'm going to check off that, yes, we have subtracted. My next step is to bring it on down. So you bring the next digit down, which is a 6. So I'm going to bring my 6 right here to turn my dividend into 36. And I'm going to check off that we've brought it down. So now I have to bring it back up to the first step, which is to divide. So now I'm dividing 36 by 4. So I'm going to ask myself, how many times can 4 go inside of 36 without going over? So I'm going to skip count my multiples of 4. So I'm going to go 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. Ooh, that went in perfectly. And that went in perfectly 9 times. So I'm going to put a 9 up top. And I'm going to check that we have divided for now the second time. My next step is to multiply. So I'm going to do 4 times 9, which I just saw by skip counting is 36. So I'm going to write my 36. Check off that, yes, ma'am, we have multiplied. Next up, we need to subtract. Well, 36 minus 36 is just going to give me 0. So I'm going to check off we have subtracted. My next step is to bring it on down. So I'm going to bring down my next digit, which is my 9, and I'm going to bring it on down to join my 0, which turns my new dividend into 9. So now that I've brought it on down, I need to bring it on back to the beginning, which is to divide. So now I'm dividing 9 by 4. So I'm going to ask myself, how many times can 4 go into 9 without going over? So let me count my multiples. 4, 8, 12. That's too big, so I'm going to go back. So 4 goes into 9 2 times. So I'm going to write my 2 up top. Check off that we have divided for the third time. Now we need to multiply. 4 times 2 is 8. Check off that we've multiplied. Next step is to subtract. 9 minus 8 will leave me with 1. And let me check. I'm going to check that we've subtracted. And my next step would be to bring it on down, but I don't have anything else to bring down. So that means I'm all done solving. So I'm going to bring my 1, which is my remainder. That's what's left over after we evenly divide by 4. I'm going to bring my 1 up top to my quotient, who sits on top, to make my answer 92 with a remainder of 1. And 1 is less than my divisor of 4, so my remainder looks good. Awesome job. Let's do one more problem together. All right. So our last problem is 843 divided by 7. So I'm going to start with my first step, which is to divide, and I'm going to start with my first digit on the left in my dividend, which is an 8 in the hundreds place. So I'm going to ask myself, how many times can 7 go into 8 without going over? And I know that's only once. So I'm going to put a number uno, a 1, up top. And I'm going to check, yes, ma'am, we have divided. My next step is to multiply. So I'm going to write my multiplication symbol up here so I remind myself that I'm multiplying the divisor, which is 7, by the most recent digit I've written in my quotient, which is 1. So 7 times 1 gives me 7. Check off that we have multiplied. Now I need to subtract. 8 minus 7 gives me 1. Check off that we have subtracted. Now I need to bring on down the next digit next to 4. Next to 8, which is 4. So I'm going to bring on down my 4 to make my new dividend 14. So I'm going to check off that I brought it down. And now I need to bring it on back to the beginning of my steps, which is to divide. Now I'm dividing 14 by 7. So I'm going to ask myself, how many times can 17 go into 14 without going over? And I know 17 goes into 14 perfectly 2 times. So I'm going to write a 2 up top. And I'm going to check off that, yes, we have divided. Now I need to multiply. 7 times 2 is 14. My next step is to subtract. 14 minus 14 is going to leave me with 0. Check off that we've subtracted. My next step is to bring it on down. So my last digit, which is 3, I'm going to bring it on down to join my 0. So now my dividend is 3. So I'm dividing 3 by 7. I need to go back to the beginning, back to my first step, and divide. So I'm going to ask myself, how many times can 7 go into 3? Uh-oh, I know 3 is less than 7, so it can't go in. It goes in 0 times. So I'm going to write my 0 up top, okay? And I'm checking off, yes, ma'am, we have divided. My next step is to multiply. 7 times 0 is 0. So I'm going to put my 0. Check off that we have multiplied. Now my next step is to subtract. 3 minus 0 gives me 3. I'm going to check off that we've subtracted. Our next step is to bring it on down, but I don't have anything else to bring down, so I am all done. So that means that 3 is our remainder. So I'm going to write 3 up top to give us a quotient, an answer of 120 and a remainder of 3. All right, so I hope these examples help you out with today's assignment. Y'all are all going to do great. You are all smart cookies, and I can't wait to see all of your hard work. Good luck.